It's episode 119 of the Daikaiju Network podcast, and I'm your co-host Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. What's up?
We are doing The Golden Bat this week. I think it's 1965, done by Toei Studios. Unfortunately, when it comes to the history of the character and also sort of the history of kind of this production, there isn't a ton of information out there. And like, for example, one of the things I could not find was the actor who played Golden Bat for the film. And all I could find was the individual who did the voice, which I thought was probably going to be the same actor because, well, when he speaks, it sounds like he's actually speaking through a mask. And so it's just kind of interesting that here's this movie that sort of has, maybe I guess you could say, a small cult following here in the States, and not a whole lot of information is known about it. But even then, if it was not that well known here, I would have thought that there still would have been enough information out there, considering Golden Bat is arguably the world's oldest superhero. So it's a little sad that there's just not a lot of information on the production of this movie. And one of the things I would suggest doing is going to our YouTube page and go into the GFest 25 playlist, and we have the panel on Golden Bat. And I would just click on that, and I would watch the panel done by Andrew Pataglia. And he does a very good job of getting information, general information about Golden Bat, its history, its different iterations throughout Japanese pop culture and the like, including a lost Golden Bat film from, I think it was like 59, if I'm not mistaken. I guess even in Japan, no one really knows exactly what happened to the movie. But sort of first impressions, I want to say that I was first introduced to this movie at our very first G-Fest back in 2012, and it was on the G-Fest channel, and I believe it was showing on the day that we were getting ready to leave. Back during those first, I think, 3 G-Fests, we ended up leaving on Sundays instead of Mondays. So we would be leaving virtually, towards the tail end of the convention, but not exactly. And that morning they were showing Golden Bat, and I saw this and I'm like, this thing is so crazy, but yet at the same time it's not taking itself seriously, which is great, because a lot of times when films are really crazy or they have like plot issues or the like, they end up they just don't have that sort of charm that a film like this does. And for those who have been longtime listeners know how much of a fan I am of this film, because it is really over the top crazy, but at the same time, because it doesn't take itself seriously, that is the huge charm of this film. And for a lot of people, I think this is a film that that's what makes it entertaining, is because it's so crazy and that it doesn't take itself seriously. It is really it's a really fun film, goofy and over the top, but it's really fun. Kind of what was your exposure, Jason, and kind of what were your initial impressions on Golden Bat?
I was first known about this film when both of us went to G-Fest for the first time in 2012. I think I saw just a little bit of the film and everything, and didn't really know a whole lot about it. And then I think over the years we kind of gotten more exposure of it. To me, first impression of it is that to me it was a little bit goofy at times. Pretty much seeing certain scenes here and there when we were taking a break or just kind of in for the night, and just kind of taking a glimpse of it here and there. And I think a few years ago, I think I fully watched the entire show, or should say movie, of Golden Bat, and my first impressions of it was I thought it was a bit decent at the time of seeing it through and through, and um, yeah, that was that. And then, of course, watching it here specifically for the review, and also seeing it, I think, um, recently all the way through. I think within the last 2 years, after the first viewing of it, full length of it, I think I've, how should I say this? I think I've gotten, um, mm, I think I've probably kind of, I lost my train of thought on this right now. What I was trying to get at, but I think it's kind of grown on me a little bit more after each viewing, because I think the way it was done, and just the kind of how they did it, um, it kind of gives you the something that you want to see um, over and over again.
All right. Well, before we really dive a little too much into kind of our thoughts about the film, let's just go ahead and give a plot overview of Golden Bat, which is more or less a very straightforward and simple story, even though I've got quite a few points here. But let me just say before I even continue, it's basically bad guy shows up controlling a planet, and world's in danger. Golden Bat is discovered and becomes a hero. And then it's just basically a fight to stop the bad guy and from the planet crashing into the Earth. So here is the plot overview with a little bit more detail about it. Amateur astronomer Akira Kazaya discovers planet Icarus is bound to collide with Earth, but the observatory doesn't believe him. However, Yamatone recruits Akira to the Pearl Research Institute, an organization funded by the UN to protect the Earth from any abnormalities. The evil Nazo and his crew, though, are the ones controlling Icarus's trajectory, and a super destruction beam cannon, that's its actual name, is in the works by the Pearl Institute to destroy Icarus, but it needs a special lens made of some very special material. One of their teams from the Pearl Institute sends an SOS from an unknown island once believed to be a fragment of Atlantis. It's on this particular island that Golden Bat is discovered and brought to life. Golden Bat immediately intends to destroy Nazo and his band of goons. The special material for the lens is found on Golden Bat, and a test is successfully performed by the Pearl Institute. Nazo notices and enlists the assistance of his three generals, Jackal, Piranha, and Keloid. Jackal and Piranha are successful in stealing the lens, or so they thought, and kidnapping Dr. Pearl. Later, they kidnap his granddaughter, Emily, to try to get him to tell them where the lens is actually hidden. Nazo then increases Icarus's speed towards Earth. Our heroes eventually get on board Nazo Tower and continue their assault on Nazo. Golden Bat comes to their rescue so they can try to stop Icarus while he goes to stop Nazo. Golden Bat impales Nazo's head and takes the beam back to Yamatone to destroy Icarus. And Golden Bat is thanked, flies off, and the movie comes to a close. So the first thing that needs to be noted here is that this is a pretty short movie. Its actual runtime is a little over an hour and 12 minutes. And yeah, I always keep believing when I am ready to watch this, and I've watched this movie enough times over the last 4-ish years since I've owned a copy of this film. I keep thinking it's about an 80 to 90-minute film. And it's like, no, it's barely over. It's barely over an hour. And that's just something that kind of anymore, I don't know if that would even constitute as a movie. You know, back in the day, anybody who is familiar with some of the Universal Studio monster films know that the Mummy films that had Lon Chaney Jr. play as the Mummy. No joke, the 3 or 4 Mummy films he was in were 61 minutes in length, and those were considered films. Today, I don't think those would even be in theaters right now, because I think film has to be, I think, at least maybe 75 minutes to be considered a film, or at least a major motion picture with sort of a regular running time through the theaters, like you get with most movies anymore. They come out, let's say, May 10th, and they last maybe month and a half, 2 months in theaters or whatever, and they're shown worldwide, where there are exceptions to the rule where, let's say, for example, and this has happened, some of DC's animated films go and play in the theaters sometimes. But if they do, it's usually either a one night only thing, or it's maybe a couple nights showing, and then they're immediately taken out of the theaters, because a lot of the average DC films do run at about between 72 and 75 minutes. They aren't considered full-length motion pictures, I guess, anymore. So it is a very short movie. And the funny thing is, because I have never been someone who really watched any films with Sony Chiba in them before, I always thought Sony Chiba was the individual who played the Golden Bat in the movie. And I didn't really realize until, obviously, a couple of years after the fact that I saw who Sony Chiba actually is, that it finally clicked with me, where when Yamatone, the character Sony Chiba plays in this film, actually comes up on screen, the only part you see of him at first is his back, and then after a couple minutes of dialogue with Akira, then the camera turns on him, and it's choreographed in a way to where the audience, I could tell the audience was supposed to know who this actor is, but it just never occurred to me that Yamatone could be Sony Chiba. I think, though, while Sony Chiba is a pretty good actor, I've never seen any of his Street Fighter films, so I really don't know exactly, because I guess that's his big claim to fame in cinema. I thought that Golden Bat was stealing the show an awful lot of times, and I think rightfully so. Not only is he our main hero, more or less, in this film, but the actor, whoever does play him, and anybody out there who happens to know the actor who plays him, let me know, because I don't even think in that panel at G-Fest we had information as far as who played Golden Bat in this film. But the actor has such incredible charisma. I absolutely love it. He steals the show, and I love his performance. And the other actor I have to name in this film, whose performance I think is wonderful and so deliciously over the top, and is one of the reasons why I love this film so much, is the actor named Yoichi Numata, who plays Keloid. And his performance of Keloid sort of reminds me of a Joker character, with his maniacal laughs and his weird little facial and body expressions. I really enjoy I really enjoy the performances of these two actors specifically. Like I said, I have no clue who plays the actual Golden Bat. I found the voice actor. The voice actor is Osamu Kobayashi. Does a very good job, but like I said, I thought it was the same guy, because when he does the Golden Bat voice, it actually does sound like he's speaking through a mask, which is what the actual actor is wearing, is a skull mask. But yeah, I really enjoy these two actors. Very charismatic. I love their performances.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I saw anything on Wikipedia about it. They didn't even list who played as Golden Bat on the film here. Just kind of lists some of the cast members that were in the film, and then, of course, the anime and everything. But yeah, as far as the runtime of it, I kind of noticed that while watching it in detail for the review that it seems to really kind of pick things up right away, and it seems that it doesn't kind of there's to me it seems that there really wasn't much of a break in between certain things. As far as I know, I'm not even sure if you kind of noticed it. Like, I don't know if you noticed that there wasn't much in breaks in between certain fights, or they're like, well, they're probably, yeah, I can maybe say there's maybe a little bit, but it didn't seem to last very long, in my opinion. That's probably the reason why it's a little bit too short. It just really dives into everything right away. I think in the first 10 minutes or so, you tend to see the golden bat right away, instantly. And like you said, I did really enjoy the cast members in this one a lot, with the villains in this one here, with Nazo and his henchmen there. I think I forget, was it I'm trying to think of the Karido, I think
Keloid.
yeah, it says in here, it says it differently, but
Yeah, I
I
think that's
really,
like the actual Japanese pronunciation or name, I guess.
but I really did like the guys acting in there. It's a little bit overboard at times here and there, but I think it really kind of fits with the kind of film the Golden Bat is. But yeah, I did enjoy the characters in this one. Not just the villains per se, but as well as the heroes, or uh, heroes, or whoever you want to call them in this one. But yeah, I think that's all I can think of for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about our heroes for a moment. I find it funny, and this is one of the issues with the film in terms of like plot holes, contrivances, and just sort of, I guess, just I'm just going to come out and say it, kind of a sense of bad writing, to a degree in which we're first introduced to Akira Kazahe, and he's discovering that Icarus is coming towards the planet, but yet how is it that an amateur astronomer with a telescope you could buy wherever is able to see this planet, but yet the observatory just up the hill with the really big uber mega,
With that kind of telescope that he has, it's not quite as powerful compared to the
right?
ones
And
that the
so
astronomers have.
it's one of those things where it's like, how is it that the actual professional astronomers aren't able to see it, but yet this amateur is
Yeah,
able to?
this is kind of one of my gripes on this particular film, is the beginning parts of this film, whereas it seems as though that this whole movie was going to focus around Akira Kazahaya. And once the vehicle comes up, and these kind of dark clothed characters kind of somewhat kidnap him, but then they take him over, and then Dr. Yamatone discusses about the Icarus situation with him, and it's like, oh, we need your help, but however, how do they know all this information even though they didn't even need his help to begin with? That's kind of one of the things that I kind of had a little bit of a gripe about.
Well, yeah, and this is one of the major issues with this film, because we're introduced to Akira, and not only is he, being an amateur astronomer, able to see something that the professionals somehow can't with their much more powerful telescope, but his character, once he accepts being part of the Pearl Institute, he immediately goes out with Sony Chiba and the rest of the members of the Pearl Institute to save these other members. And he immediately knows how to help fly their aircraft that they're using to go to the island. But also, more sort of, I guess, dumbfounding is his character, by and large, kind of disappears from the film. I mean, you do see him from time to time, and he does have some other small speaking roles.
Yeah, he basically didn't really have a major role once he accepts that job or role at the beginning of the film. It's pretty much, I thought he was going to be like one of the big main characters of it, but then he was just thrown away within at least 5 or so minutes.
Well, yeah, and he's supposed to, with the exception of very rare cases, but you would have to handle it very well. Usually, you know, one of the first characters you see on film, they don't necessarily have to be your main character, but they usually end up having to be one of your main characters. They don't have to be the star, but they have to be sort of in the top, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4, probably not even 4 actors or stars of your film. They have to play sort of a major part in it. And what he really does throughout the course of this movie is he just joins the Pearl Institute and confirms, actually, what the Pearl Institute already knows. Because when Yamatone, I don't even know why this Akira character, now that I think about it, is even involved in this film, because
yeah, it's just like what I said, that when he was dropped off by the dark clothed people who apparently works for Pearl, is that he was explained by Yamatone of basically everything that he knew and asked him if he can join. It's like, what's really the point in the character to begin with if they already know about what Icarus is?
Right. And I mean, yeah, because like we just said, the Pearl Institute already knows. So, and he's not someone involved, for example, in either defeating Nazo or is the hero at the end, like helping to either build the super destruction beam cannon, which is the actual name of that thing, or firing the cannon at Icarus or whatever. He's just there, and there's no real point to him whatsoever. And that's, you know, sort of an issue with this film, is that the writing isn't great. But at the same time, like I said earlier, excuse me, at the top of this podcast, this movie does have a lot of issues in terms of character development, character arcs. It even has issues with sets and props.
Oh, yeah.
When you really pay attention to some of the sets, even the costumes, like the Nazo character, his whole getup looks like it's made out of velour.
Or some kind of velvet,
yeah,
something like that.
I mean, it's cheap stuff. But then you see other parts, like, for example, when Yamatone and the Pearl Institute reveal that the imposter Naomi later in the film is actually Piranha, there's this moment where she goes up the stairs and some of the members of the Pearl Institute try to climb up the stairs, but as they do that, they grab the railing, and that railing is wobbling really badly.
Noticed that.
And even before then, she does some sort of a leap or whatever. She leans up against what are supposed to be computers, but they wobble and shake like they're boxes. There's a lot of flimsy, cheap stuff here.
And I've also noticed too that when they were at Atlantis there, when they were kind of jumping over some of the rubble and everything, you can definitely tell some, like the tips of their feet or something, didn't quite get completely over those apparent stones, and kind of grazes them. You can see them like rock and all that. And then when they were trying to escape from that temple there, you can see in some of the areas, if you look carefully kind of in the background, when they were trying to pull out some of those rocks, you can definitely see those move very fairly easily.
Well, and even when those columns were falling anyways, just as even they were falling, breaking apart, you can easily tell that they're foam or something of that sort, because how they break it was a very clean break to begin with, for example. But then on top of that, when they fall, and you just kind of look at them and you see how they kind of come in contact with each other as they're breaking apart and then fall into the ground. And I understand, yes, you can't have the real stone falling because otherwise you're killing your actors. But you could still try to do maybe a separate shot of, you know, where you build a small set or you do some miniature work and you break it. But then again, though, too, this obviously looked like it was a cheap film. This was a film that may have been rushed in its production because, like I said, a lot of things look really cheap.
And speaking of the settings and everything, kind of want to touch upon a little bit on the visual effects portions of this. Even though that they were probably decent in the day, you can definitely tell. Obviously, when Golden Bat is flying over some of these submarine ships are flying, you can just see them fairly, everything right through them, what's behind them and everything. Because some of those didn't quite do well, and trying to not have everything kind of see through, through these characters or objects, even when they're flying in the flying part of, like you were trying to demonstrate with Golden Bat. Some of them were a little bit off, I would say, and a bit slow.
Well, and to like his little bat emblem that is used sort of as not just a calling card for Emily, but also a means of kind of spying on Nazo and his goons throughout the course of the film. I think if anybody has seen basically universal horror films, or just even classic horror films in general, from like the 30s through the 40s, and you have like those bats that fly through. If you've seen films like Dracula or even Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein or what have you, anything that has some sort of bat prop, it's cheap, at least on that level, but I would even argue in some scenes it looked even more cheap in this particular film. But then there were some moments that I thought were good. If you were to look closely, for example, you could still tell it's an effect. But when Keloid disguises himself as Dr. Pearl in one point, and the actor who actually plays Dr. Pearl walks by himself and kind of straightens up his tie, the real Dr. Pearl is standing there. But if you look closely, you can barely see a little bit of an outline of kind of the computer graphic. But if you're not paying close enough attention, it looks like an actual actor is standing there.
Yeah, it seemed like they filled the kind of the whole void of not having things going through, like what's behind that certain character or the matte screen. At least they filled that in. But when it comes to the objects and Golden Bat flying in the air and everything, they didn't particularly do a good enough job in that certain aspect of it, which to me is a little bit disappointing, even though they did a fairly decent job on this certain matte screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing, but at the same time, too, like I wonder if this was a film that not only had a small budget, but if it had a very short production time. And as we know, in Japan, at least when it comes to a lot of these science fiction films, at least back in the day, I don't know so much about now, but back in the day, they had a very short production time. And I'm wondering if this was part of the issue, and this was maybe even shorter compared to some of those other films.
Yeah, I'm probably guessing it could be the case with this being released on the 21st of December of 1966, because I think that was the time when television was starting to come out around that time.
Television had been coming out really since the early part of the 60s, because Godzilla's audience more or less peaked around I think around Monster Zero, if not even Ghidorah, it was kind of about the time in which it peaked. Yeah, there were a couple moments like with
So
Destroy All
about
Monsters where it increased briefly, but that's just because Destroy All Monsters was thought to be,
so about 1 or 2 years beforehand.
yeah, more or less. You talk about some cheap effects, though. I guess in a way it sort of works, but it's an old camera trick. Like in this movie, I didn't realize until I was paying attention for this discussion how often it happens in this film where you have characters, especially characters like Jackal or really Nazo and his goons, and then Golden Bat, where they're trying to do super jumps. The camera, as these actors are like in the middle of doing their jump, the camera like quickly pans down
Yeah,
to make it
that
seem like they're doing their super jump,
yeah.
and then and then the actors are in another part of the set or whatever, and they gently land. The funny thing is, though, if you watch right at the end as Golden Bat's ready to take off, and I laugh at it every time because they sort of screwed up the shot of this. Golden Bat, says goodbye to Emily, and he's running, and you hear the guy go, "Gah!" and he's jumping, but you see the front part of his foot landing on the ground just off to the corner of the shot there. It's so funny
Yeah,
how that.
I didn't quite pay attention to that, but yeah, when you were talking about that, the whole jumping kind of make it look like that they're jumping in the air and stuff. That's what they did most of the time in Japan for basically a lot of their TV shows and movies as well. Because I've seen it. I think you've probably seen it in when we
Power
watched
Rangers.
Iron King, and then Power Rangers, and I'm assuming some of the others like the older Ultraman TV shows, all that. That's kind of somewhat an effect or an illusion that a lot of these Japanese TV shows and movies have done.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know. Off the top of my head, anyways, I cannot think of an American film or like science fiction TV series at any point that's done that. That's not to say they didn't. I just can't think of. I'm sure,
I think
someone has.
I think as far as I know, I don't think really anything in American films has done that. I think they just tend to more. I think we had more of a budget to kind of pull things off with more kind of matte screens and wiring
Hmm.
effects to where they didn't. I don't think really necessarily needed to do that to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, of course, with a lot of American production studios, and there have been exceptions to this, they tended to not only have larger budgets on average when compared, obviously, to Japanese films and television shows, but they usually had a longer production time too, especially with films. Um, but yeah, I never realized how often they did the sort of super jump in this movie until I really was paying closer attention to this.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty common.
I have to say, though, I do love the music of this film. I think the Golden Bat theme, um, it's I don't know all the Japanese lyrics to it or even the English lyrics for that matter, but I really do like how it sounds. It's got a nice it's got one of those rhythms and
It's kind of catchy in a way.
yeah, it's very. I mean, I'm not a music person, so I'm not sure what all the music lingo is in terms of trying to describe certain aspects of a song or whatever. But it's got sort of like a chorus and a main theme that's very catchy, and it sticks. It's been sticking in my head since I watched this yesterday. It's very it is a very catchy tune, and I like the whole Oganbato Yopo Yopo, and then ba ba da ba 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 da ba 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 ba. It's
Yeah,
incredibly catchy.
it's pretty much one of the only tunes that you'll basically hear in the entire movie. I know there's some ambient kind of music or background music in there, but you don't
Hmm.
really hear or recognize it as much It's like the Golden Bat theme is the only one that stands out the most.
And I have to say this off the top of my head. I mean, outside of a few themes and marches from the Godzilla franchise, when it comes to other Japanese science fiction movies that I've seen, anyways, um, and I guess maybe the original Ultraman theme, I can't say any other theme or piece of music is not only incredibly memorable, but one that can kind of get stuck in my head so well, because I can't think of anything about the closest thing I could think of coming from the Gamera series
I would have
is
to say
the
it's the Heisei one.
yeah, like the dun 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 dun.
Well, and then
dun,
the
dun,
Showa
dun, dun,
one
dun.
too, with the children and all that.
Yeah, I
The
guess yeah,
children song one.
Gamera,
Yeah.
Gamera. I basically forgot about it until you just brought it up. But the Ogon Bato theme is it's very catchy. I do like it.
Mm-hmm.
I would buy a CD if it was just even just that song.
Yeah, I bet you would.
I would. Um, let's see. I also, well, we talked about the jump scenes. As crazy as those are, though, I do enjoy them a little bit because it adds to the hokey, cheesy charm of this film. Um, let's talk, though, about um, really let's talk about Golden Bat, Nazo, Jackal, Piranha, and Kelloy. Basically, the three sort of, I guess, super characters of this film, sort of their appearance. We already kind of talked a little bit about Kelloyd and the actor, that Kelloyd, out of sort of Nazo's generals, really steals the show when it comes to the villain side.
Yeah, I think he's probably more of the top general out of the three of his pretty much top henchmen there.
Yeah, and Jackal, all three of the actors more or less do a very good job. Jackal is sort of over the top as well, but not to the degree that Kelloyd is. Jackal is more
kind of behind the scenes and kind of gets the job done in a way.
Yeah, he's very scowly and sort of serious, but when he gets angry and expresses it, it's fairly over the top, not as over the top as Kelly, but over the top. Piranha is more of the subdued of the three. She is softer, but a lot of times her character spends time being a replicant of Naomi, who is, I guess you could say, the lead female character of this film.
And then trying to infiltrate and trying to figure out where that the lens is to that beam weapon.
Yeah, I would say out of the three generals, Piranha is the least interesting, but a lot of that is because, like I just said, she spends probably most of her time in this film as a replicant. Mm-hmm. But then also, too, even when she's on film, her character a lot of times looks concerned or worried and is sort of placed in this damsel in distress situation, kind of. Mm-hmm. Two prime examples of that actually are when the Pearl Institute finds out that she is not the real Naomi, and so then she transforms back to her real self, and then basically has that body language and that look on her face. She is able to escape from the Pearl Institute and then go back to Nazo Tower, but even then, the next scene you see her, and when she confronts Nazo and admits that, yeah, she failed, she couldn't find the actual beam cannon or the lens and what have you, you can tell she has this concern, and rightfully so, because she knows she failed. But her character, sadly, again, I just don't know if this is part of that whole, time in human history where, again, females were looked upon as kind of the lesser, weaker sexes, and therefore they tended to play, such damsel in distress roles, weaker roles. It's stuff like that. Of course, yes, there have been exceptions to that, but I can't help but to think that maybe her particular character was just kind of written that way just because that was kind of normal back in the time. But it's just kind of unfortunate because I think her character really showed a lot of potential, especially earlier in the film when she's introduced and all that. And I think you really could have done a lot more with her being a replicant, but we never see her do much of anything other than act as a replicant. And even then, she doesn't even come close to try to succeeding. But again, this is basically a kid's film. So, I mean, there are a lot of passes we could give this film because it
Right.
is, I think, geared more towards a younger audience. That's why you have issues with characters and their arcs and other things. So, it's kind of like, okay, well, how hard can you be on a film? Because if it is a kid's film, you do have to be a little bit more lenient with it because it is simpler storytelling. You're not going to necessarily get the best story. That's not to excuse the fact that you shouldn't, but because of how kids think and what they're attracted to, things obviously are set up more differently in kids' films than they are for more mature audiences.
And hence with the running time of the
That
film
too,
and how
yes.
it kind of dives right into the action and everything right away.
Right. Yeah. I guess I never thought about that part where, yeah, because this is more or less a kid's film, that's also probably a huge reason why this film is not that much longer than what it actually is.
Mm.
What is it with Golden Bat's cane tip? Because it seems like it's so deadly because everybody he hits or even, jabs.
It seems like a couple times when he hits Jackal and Killoyd with the kind of the bald end of his cane, it seems like he kind of hits him kind of in the lower area of the stomach and is like just painful or something, or like if he was trying to get at somewhere else, like the nether regions or something, and just like knocks him out cold or what.
Well, it's so funny because the times that he goes after Kelloyd and Jackal, we do know as an audience he's not stabbing people because there's no knife or anything. It's not implied, and we don't even see anything. He just whacks people with it, and but every time he goes after the abdominal area with both Kelloyd and Jackal, the camera quickly zooms up, and it gets to the expressions of Jackal and Kelloyd. And of course, those are over the top too. And those are some of my favorite moments of this film too, are the expressions of Jackal and Kelloyd when they die, because they're always like,
and then of course there's at times where he'll have the other end of his cane there and then shoots out, I think probably the same beam as the other laser guns, and then of course kills him that way too.
That too. It doesn't happen that often here, which is interesting. Right. But you talk about funny and enjoyable scenes. One of my favorite scenes is right after he kills Nazo and he realizes that there is a self-destruction timer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Golden Bat goes, and he's looking at some sort of, I guess, timer, and then he does it again. He does it 3 or 4 times over the course, and it's just like, dude, the ship's gonna blow up. You might want to get out of there.
And another scene that I liked is when he knocks out Killoyd or kills him off or whatever happens there, and he just kind of turns around, wishes his cane with all the blades and stuff from the ground, and they just tip over.
Yeah, for those who have not seen the film, Kelloyd had a batch of these blades just come out in this hallway of Nazo Tower to stop Yamatone and the other members of the Pearl Institute from escaping. And then Golden Bat shows up to save the day. And, he takes out all these Nazo goons, and then he's able to get Kelloyd one-on-one, and then Kelloyd just kind of backs up and runs into a spike there for a second. So then
it looked like he was going to get stabbed by one of those.
And then Golden Bat takes his cane, I guess kills Kelloyd, and then Golden Bat, whoosh, and then the blades, like paper. You can tell they're like cardboard. They just flip over like that. For those who are listening to the audio version, unfortunately, you can't see the expressions and things that we're doing here, but
yeah.
Check out the YouTube one.
But yeah, I think that was probably one of the more hilarious parts of that film there.
Yeah, I mean, this and again, I think we really need to discuss this film because, let's get it out of the way first. The main point is this is definitely a film for a younger audience. Uh, and so as a result, you have to expect that ridiculous, goofy things are going to happen. But even then, sometimes with some of these films, because of just bad writing choices, whatever, um, sometimes the goofiness gets in the way of the film and it tends to harm the film. I will argue that this movie is an exception to that rule. It's one of those few films where it's so goofy, so ridiculous, and over the top that that's part of the charm of this film. Because think about it, you have this character, Golden Bat. Okay, he's actually golden. I mean, you can't see it in the actual film because it's a black and white film.
Except for his head, though.
Yeah, and he's literally gold. He's got a skull for a head, but he's not a bat. But he does use some sort of a bat emblem or whatever as like a drone or camera of sorts. Otherwise, there's no other association with bats otherwise. And then you have Nazo, which is this four-eyed alien that is a combination of a cyborg, a pig, an anteater, whatever he is.
Maybe a lobster with his claw hand on the left.
Yeah, and then you have Jackal, basically a Wolfman type of character. You have the female piranha, which has a few physical features, otherwise not much in the way of any actual association with the piranha animal. Then you have Kelly, which to me should have been the makeup of piranha because he definitely looks more like a sea creature of sorts. He kind of has like those pufferfish type spikes kind of on various parts of his face, and he's got sort of a sparkly outfit too.
Well, then it seems like he kind of has, I don't know if it was some kind of scar or kind of scale thing on his left side of his face there, just kind of right around the eye and cheekbone area. But I'll probably have to look more into that part of his makeup there. But
yeah. But when you look at these main characters, these super characters, I guess, and the outland, just how they look and kind of their names and the things that take place. You have flying submarines in this car, like a Gotango, and then you got Nazo Tower, which is this giant drill which has eyeballs on it that shoot laser beams, and
which are pretty small.
Yeah, and I mean, it just the actual goofiness of the characters, what they look like, how they're named, and then what they do, and the other events that unfold throughout the course of the film. It's so goofy that is an actual charm of this film because the film knows what it is. It's not only a kid's film, but it's a film based off of a manga character, and it's taken care of in a way where, again, this is geared more towards younger audience, but because of the characters and because of what they do in the mangas, it's like, look, we cannot be taken this seriously. Let's just do some of the things that they do in the manga, but at the same time, let's just have fun with it because that's what this is about. And that is the great aspect of a film like this, is because it knows it is so goofy, it is so cartoonish that you can't help but to just go ahead and be like, okay, sure. Yeah, part of the problem is we don't necessarily have the best budget, and another problem too is we don't have the longest shooting schedule in the world either. But at the same time, who cares if we come up with these plot contrivances in which it's very convenient for our heroes to get out of a certain situation or for our characters to fool the villains or what have you. I mean, it's, first of all, our young audience members that are going to make up most of the ticket sales here, they're not going to care that much or pay close attention enough to really be bothered by it. But second of all, look at what we're making. This thing is one of the goofiest things in the world. I mean, do you really want to try to take this thing so serious to the point to where, people are going to, you know, you know, you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing no one. So
They can't please everyone. So
no, you actually can't. Um, you have any other things you want to talk about? Otherwise, I thought we go into our final thoughts and our rating.
I think I've basically kind of got everything covered I wanted to flesh out, particularly my little gripe on that beginning part of the film, which we've already touched upon
Mm-hmm.
there, and then of course kind of expanded a little bit more on that with the visual effects. But yeah, all in all, I think I've got everything covered on my end.
Yeah, I will say before we actually get into our final thoughts and our ratings, there are a lot of issues with this film in terms of writing and things like we've discussed throughout the course of this discussion. But I would say for me personally, too, yes, the beginning of this film is where I have the biggest issue in terms of the writing, because as we discussed, the fact that Akira really is a character that shouldn't even be in this film, considering that he's not even one of the main characters, and the fact too that when he does join the Pearl Institute, they already know Icarus is heading towards Earth anyway, so it's not like he's providing any sort of special information or assistance to the Pearl Institute on that matter. He doesn't even help in the defeat of Nazo or even the destruction of Icarus at all. He's just a pointless, useless character. But yeah, my biggest issue with the film has to be with Akira and how the film starts off, because he just disappears and he's not even an integral part for the remainder of the film at all. I mean, he never was to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to go first with their final thoughts?
I guess I'll go first. Like what you mentioned there, even though the movie itself kind of, I think if it was on purpose or Nat really knows that the film itself is kind of goofy in lots of ways, but I would also say that that it is the kind of charm that it brings out. It's kind of the certain charm that this film has, and I think that's one thing what I was trying to get across earlier in the episode, that it's the kind of charm that will bring you back to watching this film over and over again, even with some of the issues that it has, like what we've discussed, which is mainly the beginning part of the film. There, I think maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes of it there. And of course, some of the practical and visual effects there are kind of some of the other little issues there. But to me, just the majority of the story after the first 5 or 10 minutes there, and as well as the characters on both ends of the spectrum here, and as well as Golden Bat, Nazo, Killoid, is it Piranha and Jackal there. They do also add the other kind of charm into this film, and is one of the other reasons why I think a lot of people probably come back to watching this film over and over again. I would say like every day or anything, but probably be something that uh, uh, maybe like a few so times a month or every other month. I would say it does have that certain charm to it, and of course the music. It really stands out quite a bit there. Uh, like I said, the characters in this kind of really do make up a lot of kind of what makes this film the way it is, the story as well. And even though it's pretty short and kind of geared more towards kids, it does kind of have that uniqueness to it, to where you can probably watch this over and over again. It's a movie for me that I probably would come back watching at least maybe a couple times every other month. So on that aspect, even with some of the issues with this film, I would still give Golden Bat a definite buy as a rating.
All right. Um, Here is my written final thought. Golden Bat is one of those films where if you're hung up on plot holes and the believability of how events unfold, you'll hate this movie. But I truly believe fans of science fiction will come to really enjoy Golden Bat despite many of its flaws. The reason I believe this is because this is one of a few movies I've ever seen where it through and through doesn't take itself seriously for one moment. It knows its existence is to try and bring forth some of the action and intrigue from the manga and to entertain its target audience, children. The movie knows it's absurd and includes moments that are funny due to its being over the top. The uniqueness of these characters in this story is something that I have truly enjoyed in the 6 years I've been able to see this film. Since I was able to purchase a copy of the film 3 years ago, this has become one of my non-kaiju Japanese films that I tend to watch with a fair amount of frequency. It's the kind of movie that a child would write and, as a result, probably enjoys. As an adult, sure, we see the absurdities, and the movie doesn't even try to hide them, but we're sort of taken back to our childhood when we loved such goofy fare, where the only thing that mattered was the action and the outlandishness of the material being presented to us, because we had such vivid and lively imaginations. Golden Bat isn't for everyone, though. Some older fans simply may not be able to detach themselves from a more sophisticated way of viewing movies and turning their brains off to enjoy a crazy ride. Others may be able to enjoy it up to a point, but still may find issue with some of the film's flaws and goofiness. Others, such as myself, are able to fully turn off our brains and to enjoy it for what it is, a crazy, outlandish piece of science fiction fare that stokes the flames of imagination. We can laugh with the movie instead of at it. In conclusion, I have to personally recommend Golden Bat because it's one of those rare gems that's so crazy that it actually has a charm. It is a movie I find myself enjoying each time I watch it as well, and that is what makes all the difference. A definite buy. And did you have anything else you wanted to go over for this episode?
I know what I mentioned in the previous episode that I was thinking about purchasing another kaiju related board game, but I wasn't too sure if I was going to be doing that either or buy it or show you for this episode or probably sometime next month. So with that, I did not get around to purchasing anything as of right now besides the Kaiju Incorporated card game that I showed here in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say maybe in about an episode or two next month, I'll probably purchase another kaiju related game and we'll be showing it to you. So and I think starting today I will be starting on finally getting around and building the new DaikaijuNetwork.com here, finally getting that into gear after I'm not sure how many months or so I've been talking about it here. I know I kind of need to reorganize a few things on the site, just kind of write things down and kind of figure out where things we can probably keep or leave out for the time being there. But yeah, it's definitely with the way things are on the site right now, I don't think it's not quite as user friendly for right now, but the way I'm kind of seeing with the new design or theme or whatever you can call it, it's going to be kind of geared more towards getting like the podcast audio things right there on the site, and just kind of getting some of our videos from YouTube and actually get them kind of on our page as well, so you don't have to always rely on YouTube there, and also kind of get it more mobile friendly there. And then speaking of which, as far as the website goes, I should probably show you offline. I'm not going to kind of actually have anything revealed yet, but I'm in the middle of getting the new Daikaiju network kind of, branding redesigned at this point. Here, you've seen the sketch.
Oh, the logo.
Yep. So I've been kind of doing some sketches of not only just that, but as well as the word mark. I think you'll definitely like how the word mark of Daikaiju Network looks, because I think it looks a little bit familiar from what you have seen in films.
It's something that's more pop, like on a T-shirt and a cap.
So, somewhat in the ways, and I think there was a certain thing that I saw that went on sale, but I was going to kind of wait next month to get it. It's a certain font, so I was going to kind of hold out for next month to purchase that. And then of course I'm working on a brand guideline for how the things will kind of get set up or do it in a certain way, and as well as the new kind of brand coloring here and there. So yeah, that's kind of what I'll be kind of showing you offline, but don't show anything as of yet. There can't. Well, I'll be kind of just kind of share screen share it with you here once we're done. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm kind of in the middle of as of right now on my end. And other than that, I can't think of anything else. Well, I'll take that back. I think maybe in the next episode I'll announce something else. I think maybe the next episode or 2 episodes down the road there.
Yeah, speaking of the website, and granted, outside of posting like our podcast episodes and all that, yeah, we really haven't done much as far as writing and things on it. One of the things I would like to make a suggestion for the new site would be to still be able to do things like written reviews and the occasional like big piece of news or what have you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be kind of putting that as far as maybe kind of like the news or something. I'm not kind of sure as of right now, maybe kind of more in the blog area. That sort of sense with just kind of a drop down, or I'm not sure. I'll kind of dive in more to it once I kind of write down certain things, what the current website has as of right now, and just kind of simplifying it and or kind of shortening things up or organizing things up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on my side, I don't have anything else to present for this episode, but I do want to say that hopefully in the coming couple of weeks, I would like to try to do either another commentary or something I haven't done. And gosh,
just make sure you don't pull off what you did.
No, I had brain farts during that time. One of the things I either was thinking about doing, I haven't done it since maybe 2013, is go back and revisit like a film or something we have already talked about on a podcast. Like I did it in the past with GMK and the 92 Godzilla versus Mothra, where I go back and I spend like half hour, 45 minutes or what have you, just talking about the movie and if my thoughts have changed on the film or not. Because, as time goes on, sometimes we think a little bit differently about a film. And sometimes too, you watch a film more often, your thoughts and opinions change on it. And so I did those 2 films back in the day. Like I said, it's been like 4 or 5 years at least since I last did one of those. Either that or I thought about doing a commentary on what movie, though I am not sure. But yeah, I'm thinking about doing something like that in the coming couple of weeks. I don't know when, but hopefully during that time. Also, our next podcast is scheduled for September 8th. That should work. My wife's going to be out of town until either the 7th or maybe even the 8th. If it's the 8th,
What are we
may have a
reviewing
problem.
then?
Well, and that's what I was getting to. We're heading back to Godzilla territory. We are going to go to one of my personal favorites. In fact, the next couple of episodes are going to be films that are personal favorites of mine. We are doing The Return of Godzilla. And I'm trying to figure out...
Uh-oh. Looks like Ken accidentally cut out from his thing yet again here. I'm guessing he'll probably come back on here soon enough. I know he has a link here on his Facebook Messenger. Here, I'll probably kind of write to him here. Here, looks like you went. Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
Looks like you accidentally closed out of the window there.
I thought I was closing out of my Word document there. So what I'm hoping to do, or at least try to figure out with The Return of Godzilla, is there are a couple different versions of this film. You have the Japanese cut, and then the Japanese cut with the international dub attached to it, and then of course you all have the very famous, well-known New World Pictures version of the film. I'm trying to figure out how to go about doing this. I am not sure if it's something that
I would personally, in my thoughts on that, I think we should maybe do the original cut.
Yeah, I've thought about that, or I've thought about either watching both. At least for myself.
Was the 85 also on the Kraken releasing one?
No, it's not. Because of rights and all that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that's the issue with that one. But I do have a copy myself of the 85 version. I'm not telling you how I got it.
I don't think I do personally. I think I just have the VHS version, which I think is at the parents' house. And yeah. I don't even have a VHS.
And I think it's important that I was thinking at the very least, like you would do, let's say, the international one, or, well, basically the Japanese one with the international dub, and I would do the 85. But then I'm like, well, yeah, but I think it's important if we can for us to try to see both versions. And I know you can't. So I'm thinking what I could do for that particular podcast is at some point during the week, watch, the American cut, and then later do the international cut. And then that way we can have more of like a side-by-side comparison. I think it's important to discuss the American cut in the discussion simply because, well, it is such a profound film. And I'm not saying it's profound in terms of it necessarily being good, but it's profound in the fact that our generation, our particular generation, many of us grew up with that film in some form or another. Some of us saw it in theaters, others rented it and bought it.
Yeah, I was one that pretty much rented it all the time, every time when we went to the video rental store when we were kids.
And if for some fans even, it's the Godzilla film that made them Godzilla fans. And I know some of the fans out there, either just because I'm friends with them or because I've also seen them discuss Godzilla movies in general on various social media pages and all that. A lot of people will usually bring this up, saying that this is the film that basically made them fans. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to basically discuss both. And I've talked about the Japanese version ad nauseum. Again, if you are longtime listeners of this podcast, going all the way back to when we were playing at X Control Room in the early days, you will hear me talk about this film, the Japanese version, and I've said it before, even as recently as probably earlier this year, perhaps, where I've said the Japanese cut is not only superior to the New World Pictures cut in every single way, but I've argued that the Japanese version of this film, the Japanese edit, it is arguably, I think, the greatest Godzilla film ever made. And I really believe that. I think the Japanese edit and what have you, really, um, it really captures a lot of stuff. And I think it's also a film that even right now, even though it's sort of outdated with some of its story and its themes, at the same time, I still think it's kind of relevant as well.
Well, I'm not going to talk any further of it because I think a lot of people, or most of the people that listen to us, I think kind of knows my bias on it, and of course, I've just kind of briefly exposed it here just a little bit ago. So,
yeah, I mean it's a spectacular film, and with this having been released almost 2 years ago now, a lot of people um, who have wanted it should already have it by now, and obviously have seen it to the point. So, um, yeah, I mean, this is a very important film for a lot of American Godzilla fans of our generation. And I remember, though, as a kid at one point at the local mall, I remember being pushed around a stroller and seeing the poster of this at the movie theater in the mall. So I never saw it in theaters or anything like that. And I never saw it until years later out on VHS. But I do remember seeing the poster and it being advertised at the mall. That's my earliest memory of this particular film. But yeah, I think it's important because, you know, I will say this about the American edit of the film. The one area that it's superior to the international dub of the film is in the dubbing. That's the one area in which it's superior. But I think it's still important to really discuss the two movies side by side because it's such an important film to our generation.
mm-hmm.
And then after that, I mean, we're continuing Godzilla for a good while. I mean, I think we go through basically. I don't have it pulled up here. Let me double check here. I think we basically go through Godzilla 2000 before we end up doing other films here. Let me see.
I know I got my schedule here. Yeah, because it seems we're going to be going to all the way to episode. Well, we've kind of screwed this up a little bit, so I'm probably guessing from what we're seeing here, probably around 126 or 127 is when we'll finish up the Heisei version of Godzilla, and then after that, we're going to be doing Gorath.
Yeah, so we're basically doing the entire Heisei from here on out until, and then after we wrap up Destroya, we have a little bit of a break before we get into the Millennium era. Then we go into Gorath, Half Human, Super Inframan, and then depending upon the end of the year, we're going to have a Kaiju Potpourri for the end of the year episode, our final episode of the year. So that'll fall in here somewhere. And then there will be the Human Vapor. Then we'll do Godzilla 2000 and then Colossal. But I'm thinking what I might do is move Colossal in place of Godzilla 2000 and move Godzilla 2000 back. So then that way, when we get back into Godzilla, we're just getting all Godzilla again, like what we're going to be doing now for a while.
And by the way, I know you saw Meg here this past weekend. I haven't gotten around to seeing it either. I don't know if you maybe want to do a review on Meg, or you don't really consider that.
It's tough because Carcharodon, Megalodon, giant shark that used to live like 2 million years ago, and obviously science fiction horror. The thing is, though, it's not a made-up creature. And you can't really consider it a kaiju. You could consider it maybe a monster of sorts. I would argue like Sharktopus is more of like a kaiju or a monster. And again, if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, I'm doing quotes. Than Meg. It's tough. Let me just say this about Meg. Right now, I'm leaning towards no, but I still think we can make an exception for that. But if we're going to do it, I would say let's wait until it comes out on Blu-ray, and then we can do it then, if we do end up deciding on doing it.
Okay.
Because right now I'm thinking no.
Okay.
But there might be the possibility I may change my mind, but I just need to think about it a little bit more. Because, we could make the argument, look, King Kong was nothing more than a giant gorilla.
Mm-hmm. Right. And somewhat same kind of goes for Rampage in a way. Even though a couple of the animals in there were a little bit mutated, except for George, of course.
Yeah. I mean, we could arguably do Meg, but we'll still think about that. The thing is, though, I think if we're going to do it, I'd have to go try to see it again in theaters, and I don't think I'd be able to do that anytime soon. So like I said, if we do end up doing it, maybe wait till it comes out on Blu-ray and all that, which I would assume, let's see, what is this? August? Came out August 10th. It may come out on Blu-ray and stuff, maybe right around Christmas time, perhaps. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I'll probably just do a rental if we do plan on doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I will just say this about Meg. It's not the greatest shark movie in the world, but there are some things about it that I think are very interesting and intriguing. I still would recommend, if you enjoy that sort of thing, yeah, go see it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as far as whether or not we're going to cover it, I would say wait down the road and then wait till it comes out on Blu-ray if we do end up deciding to do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to us on YouTube if you're listening.
Subscribe and click on that bell.
And then subscribe to us also on Google Play and also on iTunes. DaikaijuNetwork.com is our website. Again, we haven't really done much with the site in quite a long time other than post up podcast episodes. Also, we are on so many different social media things too. The one that we're most active on, though, is Facebook. So search up Daikaiju Network on Facebook.
Yep. Like
us. Get involved. And of course, we do these on YouTube. We've been doing them for a while, the live recordings. Come to these live recordings and chat with us on the side of the windows. We've had some people do that in recent episodes already. So let's get involved. We really want to get involved with chatting with a lot of fellow fans and all that. We just ask that you be nice to one another and you keep it kaiju related.
Yeah, and then of course, from what you've seen in the past several episodes, including this one, it's just kind of basic with us going back and forth and hanging out. I know one of these times I want to kind of experiment with OBS and kind of get some nice little graphic type of thing going on and kind of make things a little bit more professional here and there. And especially with us being on, kind of getting more involved with YouTube here than just, what we've done in the past 8 or so years here. Hard to believe that's the case. So we're not just audio version of the podcast show anymore. We're just kind of getting a little bit more exposed out there visually here now with YouTube, and then hopefully with some more video platforms out there as well. So.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Thanks again for listening. And yeah.
I'll see you guys next month.
Yep.